Hello, my name is Kennedy Barnes and I'm a senior at Clements High School, and today I will be discussing the role of nanoparticles in treating autoimmune diseases. So nanoparticles are particles that are between 1 and 100 nanometers in diameter, so these very, very small particles. And there's three major types: organic, which kind of include these layered biopolymers, liposomes, things like that; inorganic, which are typically metals, so things like gold, iron oxide, things like that, as you can see on the right, and then hybrid as well. So these hybrid nanoparticles are typically nanogels and things like that. And nanoparticles can be used for diagnostics, such as imaging. They've been used in MRIs and CAT scans to kind of increase the imaging and help doctors see where different tumors and masses lie and help define the edges easier and things like that. And they can also be used as a carrier for drug delivery systems because they're easily specialized, which means, there's many different components. You can change the size, the shape, things like that. And they're very small, so they enter into cells easier, especially with tumors and things like that. So again, nanoparticles are very small and they have a variety of applications. So they can be used as immunotherapies for cancer treatment, which is nice because it kind of helps target specific tumors and things like that with cancer instead of attacking the whole body, which chemo kind of does now. So it offers an alternative solution. And they also have a role in treating autoimmune diseases. They can also be used, again, as I mentioned, in imaging and also diagnostic testing. And they can form drug delivery systems such as the COVID-19 vaccine. And they also have specific targeting, which is nice, again, with things like cancer and things like that, where you can have the drug go to one specific organ or one part of the body instead of attacking the entire body as a whole and having unwanted side effects and things like that. So the goal when using nanoparticles to treat autoimmune diseases is to induce immune tolerance. So essentially what you want to do is have the immune system stop attacking itself and start having this immune tolerance response. So this can be done through drug delivery, such as microRNA, or through telerogenic dendritic cells. So these kind of help induce the immune response from regulatory T cells, which the diagram on the right is kind of going through and explaining and showing. And the reason we want to use nanoparticles is because they're easily tunable. So you can change different characteristics such as the size, shape, and material to help specialize the particle. And there's also an alternative goal, which is kind of suppress the immune response. And this is what we've seen the most success in through FDA approval and things like that. But it is still problematic, especially in treating autoimmune diseases, because you're suppressing the entire immune response. And that can be problematic for the patient, as a common cold can hospitalize them and things like that, as they essentially have no immune system. So some successes in the field of nanotechnology as a whole is these devices that help aid in mass production of nanoparticles, which help researchers make these particles in-house instead of needing to wait for a manufacturer, things like that, to make them. So it kind of aids in the research process and developing them. And also devices aiding in analysis, which again help researchers and kind of help speed along the research process. In nanomedicine as a whole, again, the most, I think, prominent is kind of the COVID-19 vaccine. It's been a huge success for nanotechnology and nanomedicine as a whole, and cancer applications. So there have been some successes in using different nanomedicines to help kind of reduce tumors and things like that. So nanoparticles in treating autoimmune diseases is still kind of new. So the successes that we have had have been delivering immunosuppressants, so what I talked about earlier, and kind of suppressing the immune system response. So there are some in human clinical trials, and there's also some FDA-approved nanomedicines, such as Cimzia for Crohn's and rheumatoid arthritis, and Plegridy for MS. And those devices are kind of seen on the left, how they're an injection with this nanomedicine inside. So most of the FDA-approved nanomedicines are for tumor and cancer treatments, but there are, again, some successes for autoimmune diseases, and there's actually progress in the reversal of celiac disease, which is currently in human clinical trials. So there's currently a bunch of studies in development, and this is where kind of the bulk of nanomedicine and nanotechnology, the use of nanoparticles kind of lies, is in this development and research phase. So some studies in development currently are treating lupus with MPA-loaded nanogels. So essentially using these MPA, which is an acid, which has been injected into mice with lupus and has shown an increase in median survival time, as well as prolonging the damage to the kidneys, which is a huge problem in lupus. And then plant virus nanoparticles in treating type 1 diabetes and RA. So there has been some success in this kind of in the development. They're using plant viruses because they are, naturally occurring and self-assembling. So they show promise as a nanoparticle. And mesoporous silica nanoparticles targeting immune cells. So that I'll kind of go into more into the next slide. And nanoparticles with autoantigen and proinsulin and ISE for diabetes. That has shown promise with kind of helping reverse what causes type 1 diabetes. And then nanolipogels with CAMK4 inhibitor kind of slow the progression of various diseases. So this has been used in reversing lupus and RA and things like that. So it's kind of more diverse. And then studies currently in human clinical trials, as I was talking about earlier, the reversal of celiac disease with gliadin nanoparticles. So essentially with celiac disease, the patient cannot tolerate gliadin due to the loss of T lymphocytes that are gliadin specific. So essentially these lymphocytes kind of recognize gliadin and help the body digest and process it. So this study is essentially kind of inducing tolerance to the immune system. And there has been a lot of study in the preclinical trials with mice, and now they're kind of entering patient trials. So there's also a study in human clinical trials of treatment with MS with ECDI, and then gold nanoparticles for drug delivery in type 1 diabetes. And the reason they chose gold is because it helps keep glucose in the system for longer, so they're able to regulate these glucose levels more efficiently. So as I was saying earlier, mesoporous silica nanoparticles as a pH responsive drug carrier. So this study kind of went into detail and explores the use of this nanoparticle to deliver immunosuppressant or immunotherapeutic drugs both in vivo and in vitro. And this study kind of showed promise in mice, but it did kind of model, this study modeled a lot what we see across the field as, there's limitations such as limited knowledge about how it will interact with humans and kind of needing verification studies, but it does kind of address its initial goals of ensuring the drug will not rapidly deteriorate and be eliminated, and kind of the specific targeting to APCs and kind of limiting and controlling the drug release inside of these immune cells, which was the goal, but again, limitations, it needs verification studies, which is kind of where the bulk of these studies lie, is needing confirmation. So results. So this graph is essentially showing the level of nanomedicines introduced to the FDA since the 1970s. So as you can see, it's a fairly new study. So the blue represents investigational new drugs. So essentially these new drugs that are being used for different things like that, new nanomedicines. The red is new drug applications. So essentially drugs that are already in existence, but using them for a new use. And then the green is abbreviated new drugs. So these are kind of generic drugs that are also being used for a new application. So maybe drugs that are now being used in nanoparticles and things like that. So essentially this graph is showing that the study of nanomedicine and things like that is very, very new and kind of projected to grow more in the coming years. And this graph is showing that the bulk of nanoparticle research kind of lies in this new trial phase, with about 80% of studies kind of being in this new trial and only about 18% going on to clinical trials, and then only 2% becoming FDA approved. So again, a lot of the bulk of these studies lie in these trials in mice and things like that. So again, most nanoparticles fail to pass into market because a large bulk of these studies fail the clinical trial phase because, it requires fine tuning of particles and not knowing, how it's going to react in humans and things like that. So these are also new studies that are exploring autoimmune applications. There's been a lot of focus on cancer applications and things like that. So kind of using the successes from there and applying it to autoimmune diseases. And again, in this kind of new field and new application to autoimmune diseases, there's kind of a large focus on type 1 diabetes, MS, and kind of a new focus on lupus too. So again, still very new, a lot of studies being done and a lot of studies in that new research category. But their nanoparticle applications spend most of the time in preclinical research, which includes kind of in vitro testing, analyzing the data, and then kind of adjusting and fine-tuning particle characteristics for the desired outcome. And there's also been various studies with varying materials and even doing environmental stimulated nanoparticles, as you saw earlier with the pH responsive system, to just kind of have the drug released at a certain time and things like that. So there are difficulties in humans especially. So the little success in clinical trials a lot of the time is because, again, requires the fine tuning of particles, and autoimmune diseases are complex. So cells react differently. There's a lot of variations from patient to patient. Not all autoimmune diseases act the same way. Not every patient with lupus, has the exact same expression and things like that. And autoimmune diseases are very multifaceted and things like that. So it's very complex. And the immune system is also a large, complex network, so targeting proves to be difficult. So having a nanoparticle to go to the spleen, but avoiding having it uptaken by the liver and having, adverse side effects and things like that. So again, it's a multi-organ system and targeting proves to be difficult. And the autoimmune system, or the immune system, is also prone to attacking foreign bodies. So kind of ensuring that that nanoparticle stays in the body and gets to where we need it to get to. So again, the application to autoimmune diseases is fairly new, but within 10 years, I see more autoimmune research entering human clinical trials. I see an expansion of autoimmune diseases being researched instead of kind of those three focal point diseases right now. And I do see, a begin and a change of approach to more personalized medicine instead of kind of overarching, kind of looking at patients on a case-by-case basis and then kind of tuning what we do to them. And then I do see a few more successes in clinical trials leading to FDA approval. Within 25 years, I see nanomedical applications in treating autoimmune diseases entering the mass market. So kind of FDA approval of more nanomedicines aimed at inducing immunity instead of immunosuppressants and things like that. And also this kind of widespread shift to personalized medicine. So focusing more on again, patient by patient, kind of having an overarching treatment, but with tunable aspects for a case-by-case basis. And that's kind of happening at, the large medical centers and things like that. And having more autoimmune and cancer applications kind of, interconnecting and successes in one being applied to the other and more things like that. So nanomedicine has the ability to kind of, change and revolutionize the medical field as a whole, at least in my opinion, mainly because I think this approach is needed for autoimmune diseases because long-term costs of treating autoimmune diseases now is very costly. There are accessibility issues and there's current side effects, as I was saying earlier. Kind of the main goal in treating a lot of these autoimmune diseases now is suppressing the immune system, which can cause a lot of adverse side effects and unwanted side effects. And I also see, a translation to other conditions. Again, the successes in cancer treatment can be applied to autoimmune diseases and vice versa. So I think, having a breakthrough in one can really help with the other. And again, I do see the biggest impact as a shift in approach. So kind of inducing immunity So treating the cause instead of managing symptoms, which is kind of what we do now, is kind of managing the symptoms instead of like, what is causing this? Let's treat that instead. And I also see this impacting the pharmaceutical industry as, you know, the kind of form of drugs being produced and sold will change from, you know, the common pill to injections and other ways that nanomedicines can kind of be distributed. And, you know, the smaller impacts, but still important, are long-term affordability for patients and to kind of help increase the quality of life. So my role long-term for undergraduate, I plan on majoring in biochemistry and continuing my research throughout my undergraduate degree in the Boston area, and then applying for and completing a PhD MD program, and then kind of looking for nanoparticle applications for various autoimmune diseases. I'm kind of looking more into lupus and things like that now, and potentially exploring nanoparticles' role as an immunotherapy in cancer treatment, more specifically glioblastoma research, which is a type of brain tumor, just because the brain is so complex with like a barrier and things like that. So kind of getting drugs and other things that we need to get into the brain is very hard. So kind of finding a way, a better way than chemo and things like that. So I do want to give a special thanks to Miss Bryant and my mentors at Houston Methodist for all their support and knowledge to kind of help make this presentation possible. And then I do want to give a brief overview of all my references.